3.5 years ago, I made a video about getting started with YNAB, and thanks in large part to Reddit, a bunch of you all watched it. Well, since that time, I have personally coached over 500 people through setting up their budgets in YNAB, and today I'm going to take everything I've learned and incorporate it into this updated YNAB step-by-step beginner's tutorial. Let's jump in. So before I share my screen, the number one thing that you must understand about YNAB is that it does not allow you to budget money that you do not currently possess. This is very different from any other budgeting tools you may have used in the past, like Mint or EveryDollar. It's going to require you to make a little bit of a mindset shift because we're not going to be budgeting based on the paycheck that you're going to get next week or next month. We're only budgeting based on the dollars that you actually have inside your bank accounts right this moment. This single feature is one of the most confusing parts of YNAB that leads a lot of new users into frustration. But once you get it and really connect with it, I think you'll realize, like me, this is the single feature that makes YNAB so powerful. Now, the second thing I want you to know is that I'm going to go fast. I've got a lot to cover to get through this full beginner setup, and I'm also trying to please the YouTube algorithm gods and not linger for too long. So if you get confused on anything, just pause the video, rewind, and watch it back, or feel free to slow me down a bit using the controls below. That being said, let me share my screen. All right, so after you sign up for YNAB, the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new budget and give it a name. Once you get in, your screen is going to look something like this. And the next thing that we're going to do is add our accounts. I found that for most people, it intuitively makes more sense to start with the bank accounts because everything on the budget screen comes from the bank accounts. Now, if you want, you can actually download my YNAB setup checklist and my routines checklist down in the link in the description below, which is what I'm going to be using for the rest of this video. So you can see here, we've got these next 4 steps are all about setting up our different bank accounts. So let's go back over to YNAB and do that. Let's do our checking account first, and you'll need to decide out of the gate whether you want to do a linked or unlinked account. Linked is going to be where it connects to your bank and automatically pulls the transactions in for you. Unlinked is where you're not connected to the bank and you're going to need to manually input all of your transactions on your own. For most people, it makes sense to link your accounts. Let me show you what that looks like. If I click linked here, you probably won't have all these different accounts already linked, but you'll want to go through this process of adding a new connection. So let's say that I want to say agree, and then I need to find my bank. Maybe it's Chase. Come in here, and I would need to put in my username and password. So I'm going to go continue. Then I put in my username and password, walk through giving permissions. Then I come to this screen and say next. And then once I get all the way connected, I will be able to see all the bank accounts over on this screen. So you can see here, I'm logged into an old Capital One bank where I really don't use these anymore, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to use them. And so once I actually get into the connection, I can see all the different bank accounts that I have available. For now, I'm just going to set up my checking. So let's say that this was my main checking, give it a nickname, make sure that it's selected on the checking account type, and next, and done. Now you can see I've got my first bank account added in here. It's main checking over on the left-hand side, and you can see this little bitty check mark right next to it. That tells me that this is a linked account. Let's go ahead and add in another. This time, I'm going to add in a savings account. So we'll say linked. I'm going to come down here to Capital One. We'll choose this savings account here. And now we get to another sort of crossroads where we have to make a decision of what kind of savings account do we need to add in. Now, what you need to understand is that YNAB actually has 3 overarching account types. Let me actually go back and add an unlinked account to show you what I mean. So here we are doing an unlinked account. And if I click on the account type, you can see I have this budget accounts, this mortgage and loan accounts, and then the tracking accounts. With a budget account, this is going to be money that you are using on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. This is money that you're using right now, and then savings that you might use in the next 6 to 18 months. Whereas a mortgage and loan account is just a debt that you are trying to pay down that you want to see the balance. And then a tracking account would be for adding in any other assets or liabilities that you want to track as part of a big picture sort of net worth overarching financial situation. I recommend that when you're starting out, you should have as few bank accounts as humanly possible. This means like a checking account and maybe a credit card or 2 if you're actively using them, and potentially consider not even adding in your savings accounts when you're getting started. Now, why would I say that? Well, think about what a savings account is for. It's almost useless to hold money in a savings account for interest if that's your goal. So the only other reason that you would have a savings account is to keep money separate and to budget by accounts, to put money out of your checking account that you don't want to touch, that you want to set aside for some specific purpose. YNAB lets you fully embrace this category structure to where you really don't even need savings accounts. Now, that's going to sound sacrilegious to you if you've been budgeting with your bank accounts for years or decades. It's going to be hard for you to make that mindset shift initially. But I want you to know that that's kind of where we're going. These days, I don't even use savings accounts. I just hold all my money in checking because it's all the same to me. Now, that being said, if you do want to set up a savings account, I would recommend, if you are planning to use this money in the short term, in the next 6 to 18 months, then set it up as a savings account. Whereas if you're not really planning to touch this money, like an emergency fund or your kid's college savings, then you might consider setting up that as an asset, because the budget accounts are accounts that YNAB is going to put on your budget. This is money that you can actually play with and categorize out to do different things. Whereas an asset is just going to be for tracking purposes only. So you might even consider not even adding your assets in here or your emergency fund in here for your first few weeks. Everything I just said, you can find plenty of people online and in forums that would disagree with me, and that's totally fine. You need to come up with the solution that works best for you. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to be adding in any accounts for longer term savings like retirement or emergency fund. I am just going to add one savings account that I'm going to call short-term savings, where we're going to hold some things like Christmas savings, a new car, etc. We'll say that our current balance is $1,350. I'll hit next and done. So let's check out our checklist and see where we're at. We've done the checking accounts, we've done the savings accounts. Now we need to set up our credit cards. I'm going to recommend that you only add credit cards that you are actively using. Meaning if you've got some credit cards that you're holding debt on, you're paying them down, but you're not actively putting new charges on them, you're just trying to pay them down, I would consider not even adding them in here in your first few weeks. Again, you can always add stuff in later as you get more comfortable, but why overwhelm yourself when you're first getting started? So I'm going to click Add Account, come in here and do Linked, and let's go ahead and choose this Discover card. You can see it's got this balance right here, Discover It card. The credit card is the account type I want. Click Next, and now we're going to see this screen for the first time, and it has to do with setting a target for how I want to handle the balance. I'm going to go ahead and skip this for now because I'm going to show you over on the budget screen the details of truly what this is asking, and we'll go through it over there. So I'll hit Next, and then let's go ahead and add one more. Let's do the Sam's Club card. Next, skip for now, next, and done. So now we've got our main checking, our short-term savings, and 2 credit cards. Next on our list is going to be to set up a wallet, which again, no surprise, I'm going to recommend you consider not doing this, but I do have it on the list because some people do use a whole lot of cash. This is especially true for folks living abroad. If that's you, you'd want to add in a new account. It definitely has to be unlinked because you can't link to your wallet. You would choose cash and then set it up and put whatever your current amount of cash is that you have right now. Again, I'm not going to do this for the purposes of this video. Now at this point, I've got all of my accounts set up and I want to check my balances to make sure that they are absolutely correct. It's really important that when YNAB asks you for your starting balance, that you don't put in what many banks like Chase or Wells Fargo call the available balance. You want to put in the posted or cleared balance, meaning the balance that doesn't include any pending transactions. This is where I would take just a couple of minutes to triple check that these balances over here do in fact match the posted or cleared balance at my bank and don't include pending transactions. I've seen this mistake mess up so many people when they're starting out, so take that extra second to just check that. Once you've done and verified that, we're ready to move on to the budget. Before we go over there, I'm going to go ahead and just update this balance and give myself some more money to play with. So let's say that I have $4,500 to start. Now let's go to our budget. Now this screen right here is the heart and soul of YNAB. This is what we're going to be using on a daily basis to actually make decisions about our life and where we want to spend our money. The first thing you're going to probably notice is this big green ready to assign number up top. And you might be looking at that and be a little bit confused as to where that number is coming from. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about on budget accounts. This number right here is the total of my main checking and savings and cash if I had it. It's all of my bank accounts, and it's the total amount of money in those accounts that I have not yet assigned. Remember, YNAB is a zero-based budgeting system. That means that we are going to assign every single dollar, and we are going to give every single dollar a job. Now, I can already hear some of you are going, whoa, hold up. I don't actually want to spend money in that savings account. Well, you still need to give that money a job. Let's say, for example, that you're like, well, I don't want to spend $500 in my checking. What should I do? Because I don't want to accidentally use that. Well, let's just literally create a category called Don't Touch This. And then we could assign $500 right down there. We are going to assign every single dollar a job, even if that dollar's job is sit there until I decide what to do with you. But for now, what we need to do is take a look at our category groups and structures. That is next on our list. What you're going to see right here is the default YNAB setup. Now, we have full control over this. We can right click and rename these things. We can drag and drop sections. We can drag entire category groups around. We can totally make this custom to fit our needs. I found that there's 3 overarching category structures that tend to work pretty well. First, it is a category structure that helps people who are paycheck to paycheck. And so they are setting up their categories based largely on due dates to make sure that they have enough money set aside to actually pay that bill or buy those groceries. The default setup is very similar to a sort of paycheck to paycheck method. The second overarching setup that you might want to look at would be what I call the simple budget. This is where you just have one category group and you start lumping things together. One line item for your debt, one line item for your bills, one line item for your fund spending. This tends to work really, really well for people that are incredibly busy, especially for people who might be a little bit higher income and can have more room to sort of use a real 80-20 approach like this. Now, the third overarching style of budget is what I'm going to call the values-based budget. This works really well for people who aren't living paycheck to paycheck and are really trying to get better reporting. If you Google YNAB reports, Nick True, you'll come up with a video where I show you how to really deep dive into the reports and try to get a lot out of it. But in order to do that, it's helpful to have your budget structured in a way that really is more about the underlying value behind a purchase rather than when it's due. For example, I've got this right here called Joy. This is where I have fun spending, eating out for date night, coffee, and Spotify and Netflix. So I've got bills in here, I've got some longer term stuff, I've got ongoing stuff and fun spending, all inside the header called Joy. Then I also have a group called Health and Wellness. For me and Hannah, both our groceries and our clothing all have to do with our appearance and our health and our overall sort of wellness. And so to me, these go in the same group when I look at my reports. The big idea here is that you will change these category structures and category groups over time based on the different phase of life you're in and based on what your goals are at the time. For the purposes of this video, we're not going to really dive into the values or the simple budget, but I'm going to go back over here and show you how to set up a budget based on the template of paycheck to paycheck or due date budget. This is a really great way to start when you are first trying to understand the basics of YNAB, knowing that you can always change things up and get more custom down the road. Let's go back over here to our new budget. I'm going to actually right click and delete all of these default groups and start with my own structure. Now I'm going to set these up in reverse order since YNAB always puts them on top. So we're going to have inactive, then reimbursements, long-term savings, short-term savings, irregular expenses, which is what YNAB calls true expenses, kids, monthly living or lifestyle expenses, fund spending, and bills. And if you have any credit cards, I'm going to drag these credit card payments right up here to the top. So now we've got our high-level category groups set up. We need to go through and start adding all of our individual categories. You're going to hover over your bills group and you'll click the little blue plus sign there to go ahead and add these in. So maybe I have a car loan that I want to add, and gym membership, phone, car insurance, internet, Amex Gold. So this is where I'm adding in my very first credit card that is not in YNAB. So I'm adding in a category to be able to pay this credit card bill, but it's not a credit card that I'm actively using. This is just one I'm paying down. So I'm putting it in the bill section. And if I'm doing something like this, I like to put the balance roughly on that card in the name. Then let's go with Hulu, Discover Miles, another credit card that I'm working on, Spotify, Netflix, trash, water, natural gas, electric, maybe pet insurance, and of course, a mortgage. So now I've added in all of the bills that I can think of. And it's important to remember that it's okay if you miss something, right? You're brainstorming here, you're trying to capture everything, but in reality, you might miss something and you will figure that out very quickly as YNAB imports your transactions. So don't feel like you have to get this 100% perfect. You will continue to dial it in and get it more accurate over the next couple of weeks. Now that I've got all my bills in here, I would then move on to my fund spending. This is where I'm going to have sort of a cash ATM category. So this is not me tracking actual cash spending, but if I do go get cash out of the ATM, I'm going to put it here. But now, rather than just letting you watch me add all these in, I'm going to go ahead and just add everything in and then talk you through some of the strategy behind how I've set this up. So now I've got all of my categories in here. Let me briefly talk you through what I've done. You can see in the bills section, I've got basically every single bill broken out on its own. Of course, you could combine a few of these. And for example, you could just have one line called utilities instead of all of them broken out separately. You could also have one line called entertainment subscriptions and put all your Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus stuff together. It's really up to you. I've opted to go ahead and just break them out for this example. I've got my eating out and takeout. I've got individual guilt-free spending money for me and my wife, Hannah. In this case, I found this to be really, really helpful for bringing some level of independence into the budget. Next, I've got what I call monthly living. This is just the stuff you need to live your daily life. You can see here, I've got groceries, household, big box stores, and Amazon. You're probably wondering, wait, hold up. You're telling me to just put all my Amazon stuff in one line? And I'm telling you to do that for now. For most people, if you're shopping at Costco or Target or Amazon or Walmart, you're getting clothing, kid stuff, groceries, household stuff, all in one fell swoop. But it is a pain to try and break all that out. Can YNAB handle it? Absolutely. Can you do split transactions and really get super detail oriented and break it all out? Absolutely. But should you be doing that in your first couple of weeks? I don't think so. So for now, I would encourage you to, if it's a big box store, grocery place, just put it in here. If it's Amazon, just put it in here. You can always revisit the reports a month or 2 or 3 from now and then go, you know what? Now that I'm more comfortable with the software, I actually do want to start breaking out my Amazon spending and paying a little bit more attention. But for now, this is a great place to start. Underneath monthly living, this is where I'm also doing transportation expenses, essential clothing. So fun clothing items, I'm probably going to run through fun spending, but socks and underwear, I'm going to clothing essentials. My pet expenses, haircuts and grooming, self-care type stuff, ties, offerings, charitable contributions, credit card interest, and unexpected expenses. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about credit cards here in a few minutes, so just hang tight on that. YNAB calls the unexpected stuff I forgot to budget for, which is also a great name. Think of this as like a small junk drawer. You don't unexpectedly take a trip to Cancun, but you can unexpectedly get a parking ticket. It's great for small expenses like that. All right, next, I've got my kids group. For kids, if you try to get way into the weeds and all the different stuff they're doing, it again can be really overwhelming. So starting out with something like kids essentials, school stuff, clothes, whatever, is helpful to break that out separately from activities or fun stuff or toys that you might be buying for them. Next, we've got irregular, or what YNAB calls true expenses. These are the things that some people would consider emergencies, but in reality, we can plan for them. If you own a home, we know you're going to need to do maintenance. If you own a car, we know you're going to need to do maintenance. If you're a person who exists at some point, you're going to probably have some medical stuff going on. If you have an annual life insurance premium, let's plan for that. If you have a YNAB subscription or an Amazon Prime subscription that's annual, let's plan for that. These are the things that don't happen every single month, but if they do happen and you're not prepared for them, they can really take you by surprise. So let's actually brainstorm and start preparing for these ahead of time. Next, we've got our short-term savings, which again, little teaser, this is what we're going to be sort of using for the money in savings, at least for now. This is what most people think of when they're talking about their savings account. Like I said at the beginning, you might get to a place, and I hope you do, to where you don't even really care about differentiating savings money from checking money. But for now, this is going to be your short-term savings. Then we have what I call long-term savings. This is going to be when you are saving money, but it's going outside your budget. It is leaving your YNAB. This is contributing to an IRA or a Kids 529. It's purchasing crypto or contributing to an emergency fund. It is sending money that is totally outside of YNAB. It's not in any of these accounts. It's leaving your checking account and then going elsewhere. I also oftentimes will actually just call this wealth building because that's also sort of motivating or helpful for what I'm really trying to do with this group. Then I have a reimbursements group. Obviously not everybody needs this, but if you are loaning money out, have a roommate, working with friends and family, or getting reimbursements from work, You're going to want to track that here. And then I use an inactive group. This is really not that important at the very beginning, but over time, you're going to achieve goals. You'll actually take that beach vacation, or you'll actually save up and buy that car. And then you'll find a category that you no longer need. YNAB has the ability to hide it, but the problem is that if you hide categories, they show up really funny in your reports. So what I do is when I'm done with something, I will just drag it down to this inactive group, and then I can hide the whole inactive group, which puts it at the bottom of my budget. Then when I'm going and doing my quarterly sort of exercise in my reports, I can quickly right click and unhide this, go look at my reports, and then when I'm ready, I can hide it again. That's how I use this inactive grouping. So as we come to the end of this section, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of trying to make this make sense in your head. Personal finance is called personal finance for a reason. It is personal. So use this as a starting template, watch some other people on YouTube, but ultimately massage this until it makes sense in your mind for your situation. Once you've done that, you're done with creating and organizing your category groups, and you're ready to start creating targets for every category. Targets in YNAB are your plan. It's what you would like to do. If you watch this channel at all, you know that I talk a lot about money should not be restrictive, and budgeting shouldn't be this restrictive thing. In fact, YNAB and budgeting in this way should be helping you do more of what matters to you. If you hate this thing, if you log in here and it just feels like blah, then you're not going to use it, and we're doing something wrong. YNAB should be helping you do the things that matter the most to you. And the way that we make sure we're doing the things that matter the most to us is by creating a plan to make that happen. And that's where targets come into play. So let's jump back over here and actually set them up. So here I am on the budget screen. I'm going to start with our bills group, and I'm going to click on my mortgage category. Now, if you're using the brand new YNAB mortgage feature, which basically creates this mortgage account type, your setup's going to be slightly differently done because you're going to be connecting this category to that account. But for brand new people, I actually recommend not trying to use that feature for your first few weeks and just focus on using the basic budget. So back here in my mortgage, I'm going to come over here to the top right, click create a mortgage target. And I'm going to use this default needed for spending for now. So let's say that my mortgage payment is $1,500 a month. And let's say that I need it done by the 1st. So needed for spending monthly scroll down, 1st of the month, and save. And then you'll notice that YNAB actually puts the amount and the due date in the name, which is pretty amazing. Now, if on your budget you're not seeing this, it's probably because you have this toggle switch turned off right here. So right above your available column, you can toggle on or off the sort of category expansion. Let's do the same thing with pet insurance. So let's say when you create pet insurance target, maybe it's $61 by the 2nd of the month. Save. Next, we have the electric, which can vary, right? Obviously, so it's a little bit trickier. So what I try to do here is I'll either set slightly higher than average, and then just try to put that average in there every single month. And then I'll still come here and put the due date. Maybe it's by the 6th. Some people would rather go ultra conservative, and they'll just say, you know what? I'm just going to put the top amount that it could ever be and make sure I have at least that in there. And then I know that I'm always going to be covered. Either way is fine, but I'm going to do 80 needed for spending monthly by the 6th and save. So now that you've got the idea for how to set up a target for your bills, I'm going to go ahead and jump down here to our fun spending, because this is where we're going to start using a different target type. So let me click here on eating and takeout, create target. And this is the first time I'm actually going to start differing a little bit than what YNAB default would have you select. So when you open up your target types, you can see that you have 4 main target types here. Now, as a quick aside, I have a dedicated video that is goes very, very deep into these targets and even gives you a decision tree into the different target types and when to use them. But if you want sort of a quick, high-level, back-of-the-napkin explanation, I use needed for spending for anything that has a date. So if it is monthly and has a date, I use needed for spending. But if it is a holiday like Christmas that has a date, or a vacation where I'm trying to go by a specific day, I'm going to use needed for spending. I'll show you those types here in a second. But for a lot of my other spending, where it varies month to month, I like to take a conservative approach and use what YNAB calls a monthly savings builder, which is a little bit counterintuitive to use a savings target for something like eating out. Let me explain why I like to do that. The needed for spending target, if you don't use all of the money at the end of the month, will count that leftover money towards next month's target. So let's say, for example, for groceries, household, and big box stores, I set a $1,000 a month target. But let's say that I come in under budget and maybe I only spend $950. Well, at the end of this month, YNAB will apply the leftover $50 to next month's target starting in February 1st. So that means that in February, I only need to budget $950 to hit my $1,000 target. Basically, it applies the leftovers to my target for next month, which is cool, except for the fact that a lot of our expenses vary, and I tend to be very conservative. Something like groceries and household, yeah, well, I might only spend $950 this month, but that's because maybe next month I got to load up on paper towels or cleaning supplies or a 3-month supply of supplements. Because my groceries and household expenses vary a little bit, what I would rather do is try my best to pick an average and set a monthly savings builder goal or target, because that says I want to budget this much every month whether I spend it all or not. And if I don't spend it all, then next month I'm going to budget that same amount, that same $1,000, but I'll have $1,000 plus the leftovers, so that if I have a really high month, I'm prepared for it. So for me, the conservative approach is to use monthly savings builder when in doubt, because it forces you to budget the same amount every month to these different categories in order to hit your target, which then gives you extra money in the future in case you have a really, really high month. So that's a quick note on the differences between needed for spending and monthly savings builder. Now, the other two, savings balance, I very rarely use this because most of the time, if I'm saving up for something, it makes sense to use a needed for spending. A savings balance is I need all of the money at one time on one day. So Christmas is not that, because you're buying Christmas presents all along the way. A vacation is not that, because you're buying plane tickets ahead of time or an Airbnb ahead of time. A savings balance is perfect for a down payment for something where you need all the money at one time. And then the last type, monthly debt, again, you're using that for when you're setting up a specific debt account that you're wanting to track the balance of. So for most people, 80-90% of your category types are going to need a needed for spending or a monthly savings builder target. Let's say that I want to do eating out takeout, $200 a month on average. So maybe I'm a little low one month, but a little high the next. I'm going to choose monthly savings builder and save. And then it's just going to say that I need $200 this month, because there's no fixed date for this one. I think you're getting the idea. So again, I'm going to go ahead and skip on down to these irregular expenses so I can show you that other type you're talking about. So for things like home maintenance or auto maintenance, again, I'm going to be using the monthly savings builder because I'm just trying to figure out what's a fixed amount that I can set aside each month so that in case I need to do some maintenance, I'm ready to go. I'm totally not completely caught off guard. Maybe I want to start with just $50 a month to just try and build up something. So I'm going to use monthly savings builders for things like home maintenance, auto maintenance, medical, things that I don't know when they're going to happen. I just want to start saving for them. But for something like life insurance, let's say that I'm paying this annually. Because it has a date, I'm going to choose this needed for spending. The difference is I'm going to choose a needed for spending by date. So in this case, let's say that I have a life insurance premium of $550 by date. And let's say that it's due in January of 2023. I'm going to go ahead and say this repeats every 1 year and then click save. And now YNAB actually is going to tell me the exact amount I need per month to stay on track to $550 by January 5th next year. This is incredibly beneficial because for most of us, things like our life insurance or Christmas or YNAB subscriptions or property taxes can totally tank our budgets because we're not saving up for them actively all along the way. And by setting these targets, it helps you come to grips with reality of what you actually need to be doing in order to make that payment on time. What's really cool is that if you don't have enough money to fully do this 1 month, well, the next month YNAB will recalculate. So if I don't assign any money to this category and I go into the next month, you'll notice that now YNAB has recalculated and said, oh, well, now you need $45 per month to stay on track to hitting $550 by next January. So it's really cool because YNAB is always making sure that I've got enough money ready to go to do what I said I need to do. You're going to do the exact same thing for Christmas spending and vacation. You're going to use the total amount that you want to spend needed for spending by date. And what's great about the needed for spending by date for things like a vacation or Christmas spending is it allows you to spend down from that category all along the way because you're going to be buying plane tickets a couple months in advance, or maybe you're shopping for Christmas in November, and allows you to use that money along the way towards your total target amount. So that brings us to the end of our section on targets. And at this point, let's just go ahead and hop over to this budget where I've already got all the targets set up, and now we can just keep going from here. So the next step on our list is to compare the underfunded number to your income. So at this point, you'll notice on the right-hand side, underneath the auto assign area, you're going to have this underfunded number. Now, what does that mean? Well, the underfunded number is the total that you are, quote, underfunded by, meaning it's the amount of money that you need to assign down to your categories to fully fund all of your targets. If you are planning to do all these targets, this underfunded number needs to be less than your income, right? If this is much, much higher than your income, now we got a problem, because now we're planning to spend more money than we make, which is no good. What I typically tell people is that as long as this number is roughly close to your income, then we're good. In this case, maybe I make $6,500 a month, and so I'm good to go. If I made maybe $6,000 a month, I'd still be like, maybe that's fine for now. I'll leave it there and I'll further refine things over time. But if I only made $5,000 or $4,000 a month and my underfunded is a few thousand higher than my income, now I probably do need to actually take a few minutes and really go back through my targets and see which ones might be really high that are just totally throwing me off. On the other hand, if my target totals come up to $6,500 a month, but I make $10,000 a month, well, I would actually encourage you to increase your targets. I'm not saying that you need to spend more money, but maybe you go ahead and bump up some of your emergency fund or your debt pay down or some of your bigger goals that you're saving for. This is all about what steps 9 and 10 are for. Now, inevitably, this is where I'm going to get some questions from people who are going to say, hold up, I don't get paid monthly. And they're coming up with these different scenarios for why budgeting by the month isn't going to work for them. And this is where I want to really try and break some of your old habits and old thinking about the way that you interact with your money and your budget. For many of us, we are used to using our bank accounts to make spending decisions and think paycheck to paycheck. Do I have enough money in the bank to cover what I need to do until I get paid again? And with YNAB, one of the biggest and most important goals is to get to a place where we are one full month ahead and breaking the paycheck to paycheck cycle. The idea is that we want to stop thinking about how much you make per month and how much you make per paycheck and more about how much do you spend per month and how can we get one full month ahead so that you show up on February 1st and you're ready to go. What I mean by one full month ahead, you're going to understand that a little bit more here in a second as we start budgeting down your dollars, but just hold this in the back of your mind. Because I promise you, if you can focus on getting one full month ahead and breaking that paycheck to paycheck cycle, then it doesn't matter what pay cycle you get paid on or how the money flows in, and it will significantly reduce the stress and anxiety that you have around your money. All right, so at this point, we are totally ready and set up. You're ready to start assigning your dollars. This is the way that I like to do it for my initial setup. So here we are. I need to be thinking about what is coming up. What's coming next? Well, today's January 12th, which means that my Spotify payment is coming up in a couple of days. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the assigned column here and actually type $14.99. And when I do that and hit enter, now I have just taken money from ready to assign and moved it down here to Spotify. You can actually see that I have $14.99 available to pay Spotify. I could do the same thing for my Discover Miles. I could do the same thing for Hulu and just keep going and fully funding these categories based on what I know is coming. Now, I know I said that we're going to follow this order, but in order to do that, let me explain the assigned activity and available columns. And let's use groceries in order to do it. So here we are in monthly living. I'm going to click on my groceries and let's go ahead and fully fund $750. Now, remember, this is a zero-based budgeting system. And we have said that if we have typed $750 in here, that we physically possess that money. That money is in our bank account, and we are going to actually set it aside to use for groceries and household or big box stores. The assigned column is the amount of money we have on us right now that we have told your job is to buy groceries. I always liken this to, imagine you and I are sitting at your kitchen table and we just dumped your entire checking account or short-term savings account on the kitchen table. And then you grabbed $750 and put it aside into one little area and said, this is my grocery money. That's what we just did with the assigned column. Now, the activity column is going to get automatically populated as you import and categorize transactions. So let's talk about that. I'm going to come over here to my checking. And if I've got my stuff linked, when I click Bank Import, YNAB is going to automatically pull in the most recent transactions since the last time that I've done this. So we can see that I've got 3 transactions that are now sitting here that are saying this needs a category. Well, here's one for groceries right here, Publix. So what I'm going to do is double click this category and I'm going to type groceries, or I could scroll down. But either way, I'm going to select groceries, come over here and hit save. This is the screen where my check register is. This is all my transactions. And each day I'm going to be importing the transactions, seeing what needs to happen, and categorizing them. I'll do these in a minute, but let's go back over here to the budget and look right here at our groceries. So we can see that the assigned column shows that I assigned $750. The activity column now shows that negative $100. And if I click this, I can see that it was on Publix on January 11th. And now the available column shows that I have $650 available to go and spend. This right here is the true power of YNAB, because we are going to start getting away from using bank accounts to make spending decisions and instead use YNAB to make spending decisions. Before I go buy groceries, I pull up my phone, I look at my YNAB, and I see how much money I have available in my groceries category. And that lets me know whether or not I can go and buy groceries or not. So these are our 3 columns, and these are how we're going to interact with the budget on a daily basis. So let's go back over to our checklist. We're here on step 11. We're assigning all of our money down to zero, giving every dollar a job, starting with the credit card payments. Why am I starting with the credit card payments? Well, this is actually for people who pay their credit cards in full. If you are not paying your credit cards in full yet, and you're just trying to pay down the balance over time, you're still maybe actually putting some charges on it, but you're just trying to pay them down over time, then you can skip this part. But for people who pay their cards off in full, you need to make sure that you are budgeting for the initial starting balance. Basically, YNAB sees that you're starting out with a current balance on the card. You can see that I'm starting with a $3,500 balance on the Discover card and a $110 balance on the Sam's Club card. Maybe I'm paying the Discover over time, but maybe I pay the Sam's card in full. In this scenario, I need to tell YNAB that I'm planning to pay that card off. So I'm going to come to the assigned column, click on the Sam's Club MasterCard, and go ahead and type $110.84. And now what I've done is I've taken money from Ready to Assign, set it down here in the Sam's Club MasterCard category to tell YNAB that I have enough money ready to go to make that payment. In the same way that I'm looking at the available column to decide whether or not I can go buy groceries, I'm going to look at the available column to decide whether or not I can make a payment to the credit card. Now, if you are confused on credit cards, I highly recommend you check out my dedicated video on credit cards. For now, what I need you to just understand is that if you pay your cards off in full, you are going to want to budget for the starting balance on the card, because your goal is to get to a place where the available payment, meaning the amount you can afford to pay, always matches the current balance on the card. So whenever I'm auditing a budget, I'm looking, does this number right here match this number right here? Because that tells me that I can afford to pay that thing down to zero. I may not pay it down to zero. I may only pay the statement balance. But the point is, I could pay it to zero if I wanted to, because the available column almost acts like a miniature checking account just for that specific thing. So let's go back to our list. I've assigned money to my credit card payments for the cards I pay in full. Next, I'm going to come down here and assign money that's in my savings account. Now, again, this is one of those somewhat controversial hot topics around the way you should set up YNAB. I have a video dedicated to handling savings accounts if you want to check that out. I have found that for most people, it is very difficult for them to fully embrace this YNAB method of having savings accounts somewhat disconnected from your budget. And so when you're starting, I found that it's easier to maintain momentum of actually using this thing to go ahead and assign money to your savings account group based on what's in your savings account in real life. In this scenario, I have $1,350 physically sitting in this short-term savings. So I'm going to go ahead and add $1,350 from here down to the categories in my short-term savings group. Maybe I have $150 already saved for Christmas. Maybe I have $800 saved up for the summer vacation. Maybe I've got $200 saved up for this kayak, and maybe I have another $200 saved up for some small trips. Now I've just assigned $1,350 to this group, and that matches this account over here. And so I know that any money left and ready to assign that hasn't yet been told what to do, that money has to be sitting in my checking account. The next thing I'm going to focus on is any upcoming bills. And then if I still have money left, everything else. So I've got roughly $3,700 up and ready to assign still, and I need to fund my bills for the month. Now, one cool thing that I haven't showed you yet is that I can actually click this bills group if I want to, come over here to that underfunded number that I was looking at, and just go ahead and click it. And then boom, now YNAB has just automatically funded everything based on those targets. That's another really nice thing about using targets is they save us a lot of time. Now I've got $600 left. And so now what I want to be thinking about is what do I have to buy before I get paid again? Remember when I showed the couple of different budgeting options? Well, remember this budgeting option, we're still paycheck to paycheck. We're still somewhat focused on making sure that we have enough money to do what we need to do before we get paid again. So in this scenario, I'm going to say, okay, well, maybe I get paid next week. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself half of my eating out money. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and fully fund the individual spending, but only give myself half of the entertainment. And then maybe I plan to do half of my Amazon, half of my gas, do all of my Uber. And then now all of a sudden I'm getting down very low. I've only got $29 left. So I need to be thoughtful about this. Maybe I know that I need to go get an oil change. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the rest of it right here. And now I have assigned all of my money down to zero. And now we're ready to start actually using this thing on a day in, day out basis to make spending decisions. Now, I know again that some of you are going, wait a second, I know that I'm going to get paid next week. So why can't I just keep fully funding all my categories based on what I know I'm going to get paid? Because if you come down here and you say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and fully fund all this stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and fully fund all my kids' stuff and all this stuff. I know I'm going to get paid, so it'll be fine. When I actually get the money, it'll come in, it'll cover this negative. But here's the problem. If you have a negative number up top, or if you have a negative red number anywhere else in your budget, you cannot trust your positive green numbers. These colors are somewhat like a stoplight. If you have a red color anywhere, you have to fix this immediately. Let me come down here and just way overfund this. Let's put $10,000 right here. Not 100, let's do 10. So I got $10,000 right here. I'm now over assigned by $11,000. But what if I just ignored that? And what if I was like, you know what? No, I have 10 grand right here. I can go and do that. Or what if I put $10,000 into a kitchen renovation? And I was like, yeah, let me just go and do that. Well, if I'm using the available column to make spending decisions, and I'm looking at the available column before I go out to eat or buy on Amazon or have fun spending, then technically I could look at this kitchen renovation and go, oh, yeah, I have $10,000. Let me just go ahead and write that check. The reality is I don't actually have $10,000 though, right? If I look at my checking account, my balance only has $5,800 in it. So if I write a check for $6,000, my budget looks like I can do it, but the bank account doesn't. And that's because I have over assigned money that I don't actually have. This is really, really important. Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious with a $10,000 example, but the point is, if you're over by $1,200, you still can't fully trust these green numbers, these positive numbers, and live by them because you could accidentally overdraft your bank account by funding ahead. And the whole purpose of YNAB is to get to a place where we're using YNAB to actually make conscious spending decisions in the moment. And so you cannot budget money that you do not physically have. So that's why I'm going to go back here where I funded everything and I have assigned all my money down to zero. Now I know that because I don't have any negatives anywhere, I can legitimately trust these numbers. And if I want to go buy a tank of gas, I know that I have $50 that I can actually do that with. And I can use YNAB and trust it. Now, while we're here, let me briefly explain the other two colors. So we already talked about red. Red is overspending on a checking account, or it's over budgeting money that you don't have. This yellowish orangish color here, normally, if it's a positive number like this, it means that you have a target that you have not fully met, which is totally fine, by the way. It's just sort of yellow to let you know, hey, you're still not all the way there yet. This gas, for example, I have a target of $100 a month. I've only funded 50. So that's why it's yellow. And if you zoom in real close, you'll even notice that it's a little bitty pie chart. And the pie chart shows about halfway full because I have halfway hit my target for the month. Green, of course, is fully funded. You do have money there ready to go, and you've also hit your target for the month. Now, there is one other color, which is a yellowish orangish color, but has a negative number. And that happens when you have overspent on a credit card. So let's say that I go to the gas station and I spend $55. Now I have overspent, but I've done it on a credit card. I told you earlier that overspending on a checking account shows red negative, Overspending on a credit card shows this yellow with the little credit card exclamation point symbol. So at this point, you've completely finished the setup checklist and you're ready to dive into the routines checklist. I like to do this daily as part of what James Clear in his book Atomic Habits would call a habit stack, which means that you're using one part of your daily routine that is non-negotiable that you know you always do, like brushing your teeth or getting coffee in the morning, and then stacking your habit of checking YNAB right up against it. For me, I use making coffee in the morning as my trigger to get in here and do my YNAB. So what are we doing? Well, we've got 3 actions. The first is to record, import, categorize your transactions. This is bringing the transactions from the day before. The beautiful thing about doing this daily is that for even couples where maybe they have like 5 kids and all kinds of activities and moving parts and multiple accounts, even for those couples, I've seen at max 5, 6, 7 transactions a day. For most people, it's like 1 to 4 transactions a day. And so if you're doing this every day, this daily routine should take you less than 5 minutes. So back over here, what do I mean when I say import and categorize transactions? Well, you're going to see these white dots over on the left-hand side. And you'll see that I have a white dot next to my checking. That tells me that there's transactions that are ready to be either imported, approved, or categorized. So I'm going to come in here, click this, and then at the very top, I'm going to click this header that says 2 transactions to import, approve, or categorize. And then now my view has just filtered for just these transactions. I can see that over here in the top right in my search bar. It's filtering for just what transactions need to be dealt with. So now I need to deal with them. First, I have this Waffle House transaction. So I'm going to double click this and, well, that's going to be eating out. Let me go ahead and hit save. And then next I have a paycheck. And this is one we haven't actually talked about yet. But what you want to know here is that all income, all of it, goes into ready to assign. Now for advanced people, you can actually differentiate different types of pay by changing out the payee, but that's really beyond the scope of this video. For now, the employer is going to go to ready to assign, and then I would hit save. Now you'll notice that once I've done that, I have no more transactions that need to be dealt with. And in fact, this white dot is now gone. But that's what I would do first, my daily routine with every single account, is I would click in here, click import, and see what transactions need to be dealt with. And of course, over time, YNAB is going to learn my typical routine places. And the next time that I go to Waffle House, it's going to automatically put that in eating out. So then all I have to do is just approve it. Next, we need to go over to the budget and cover our overspending. So let me go back here, up to the budget section. And now you're going to notice that what I'm doing is I'm looking down the available column and I'm looking for anywhere that is overspent. And of course, I have this overspending right here on gas. This is really important. In order for me to be able to trust my numbers and to make sure that I don't rack up credit card debt, I always want to cover my overspending. So what I'm going to do here is say, okay, well, I overspent on gas. So where do I want to take that from? Well, maybe I could click this right here and say, you know what, I'm going to cover that overspending from Amazon. And then when I click that, YNAB is automatically going to move money from Amazon down to my gas category and cover that for me. So now I'm looking again, and I'm looking, and I think that's it. Looks like that's all the overspending that I have. And so now I'm done with step 2. The third thing that I'm doing on a daily basis is checking my YNAB categories before spending. This is key. This is the heart and soul of YNAB being a proactive tool. Remember what I said earlier about YNAB is not supposed to be restrictive. It's supposed to be something that's helping you achieve your goals. For me and Hannah, that looks like a bunch of house projects right now, and also saving for a down payment on a future beach rental property that we want to buy. We have some really big and ambitious goals that we really want to hit. And so I have categories in there for those, and I budget for them. And so I need to be using YNAB to make decisions about eating out and groceries and clothing to make sure that I don't overspend, because otherwise I'm going to have to take from some of the bigger goals that are actually much more important for me. So when I'm looking at YNAB to make a decision, this is where literally before I go to the store, before I order on Amazon, before I go out, I'm pulling up YNAB on my phone, I'm looking at the available column, and then I'm making a decision. So maybe I'm looking and going, oh man, I really want to go out to a nice restaurant tonight. And if it's going to be more than what I have available, then I either have to decide not to go, or I need to decide where I'm going to take this from. So maybe I say, you know what? It is really important to me to go out to this place. So I'm going to take and move $50 from here up to the eating out family category. And now I've made a decision to move that money around and then go and actually eat out and spend the $125. That is what this step is all about. Actually starting to check YNAB before spending money and using it to make decisions. Now, before I explain the weekly and monthly routines, we need to go back and hit on credit cards, because at this point, you might be a little bit confused as to what's going on with them. Let's use groceries as an example. So if you remember earlier where I talked about the assigned, activity, and available column, think that through again, but this time on a credit card. So in this case, we've assigned $750, which is physical money that we have in our bank account that we set aside for groceries. We spent $100 from the checking, and so we have $650 left. And this $650, that represents real physical money that's in our bank account that's job is to buy groceries. Imagine $650 is sitting there with like a sticky note on it that says, you go buy groceries. Now hold that in your mind. And this time, let's go to the grocery store, but swipe a credit card. So I go to the Sam's Club store. I'm going to go ahead and add a transaction. We're going to make it Sam's Club, categorize that to groceries, outflow of $100, save. So now, what just happened in real life? The money in my checking account didn't change. Unlike a debit card purchase where the money would leave, my checking account money is still there. But this time my Sam's Club balance went up. It was $110 a second ago. Now it jumped up by $100 because I took out a loan to buy my groceries. But over here in the budget, now we show assigned $750, activity of $200, which shows both the Sam's Club and the checking. Remember what I said a second ago. This money is the money that's physically in our checking account. But our checking account balance didn't change. We didn't spend checking account money to buy groceries. We took out a loan to buy groceries. YNAB is smart enough to handle this. If you imagine with me, the money sitting in your checking account with that little sticky note that says buy groceries, YNAB recognized that we didn't use that money to buy groceries and said, hey, you didn't use $100 to buy groceries. You took out a loan to buy groceries. So what we're going to do is we're going to move money from the groceries category up to your credit card payment category for you automatically. It just moved $100 from here to here. And we can see it right here in the activity. So now it changed the job of the dollars. The dollars are no longer going to be used for groceries. They're going to be used to pay back the credit card company for the groceries that they bought. And this is true every time. Let's say that I buy something on Amazon, categorize it to Amazon, $50. Let's say that I pay my phone company, categorize it to phone, $119. And every time I spend money on a credit card, YNAB takes the money from the Amazon category or from the phone category and moves it to the credit card payment category. So for people who are paying their cards off in full, you only ever have to budget for the initial balance. And then YNAB will always move your spending for you as long as you're actually budgeting for that spending. And so remember what I said at the beginning, this number should always match this number. This is an incredibly clever way to handle credit cards because it makes your credit cards just like a debit card. It forces you to actually budget for the spending that you're doing on your credit card, which is what keeps you out of credit card debt. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is this weekly and monthly routine. So the weekly routine, what are we doing? Well, the first thing you're doing is you're reconciling these accounts. And we're not going to go over this in this video. I have a whole video dedicated on reconciling. Suffice it to say that reconciling is important. I would recommend you do this weekly routine either weekly or on payday. But I would reconcile your accounts, which basically means that you are verifying that what YNAB says you have is true and is in agreement with your bank account. Next, what you're going to be doing is moving money around to cover overspending. We already covered how to do that. And so last, you're going to be assigning any extra money down to zero. So maybe we got paid since the last time that we did this. So what are we going to do? Well, we can come down here and we can manually do this if we want to, or just use YNAB's auto assign feature and say, you know what, let's just let YNAB fully fund all those targets that we set up. I'm going to go ahead and click underfunded and say update. And then boom, now YNAB has fully funded all of the targets that we've set up. You'll notice now that I have fully funded all my targets and I still have money left. This is beautiful. And this is where all of us are trying to get to, where we're able to fully fund our targets and still have money left. At this point, you've got one of two options. Option one, some people actually are very motivated by going ahead and just putting money into what they're calling a 1 month ahead category. Other people would rather get this out of sight, out of mind and say, you know what, I don't need a 1 month ahead category. I'm just going to go ahead into the actual next month. Click the arrow key and start budgeting for next month's mortgage so that I'm already getting ready for the mortgage that's going to be due on the 1st. When I get paid again in like 2 weeks, that entire paycheck can go into next month. And then I can get even further ahead. with the hope of eventually getting one full month ahead, which means I would show up on February 1st and be fully funded. That's the goal. So that's our weekly routine. So what do we do at the end of the month? Well, I would encourage you to go watch. I have a dedicated video on end of month routine that I think would be really beneficial for you. But the end of month routine is to first complete a weekly routine, meaning reconcile your accounts, make sure you've covered all your overspending, and assign your money down to zero. Next, what I like to do is really consciously take a few extra minutes to decide what to do with any leftover money. This means I'm going to actually go back to January, look at my available column, and if I had any money left over, make a decision of what to do with it. Now, this isn't really a good example because we're just starting. And so, of course, I have a ton of money still available because I haven't spent it all. But let's pretend, for example, that legitimately I got to the end of the month and I had a bunch of money left over in my eating out category. Now, yes, I could just leave that money there, roll it over to next month, it'll sit there, and then start to build it up and accumulate money in eating out, which is definitely what I would want to do for something like auto maintenance or home maintenance. But in reality, if I've come in under budget on something like eating out, I might want to take this money and move it to some other goal that I have. Maybe I'm aggressively trying to pay down debt, or maybe I'm trying to build up my 1 month ahead category, or maybe I'm trying to aggressively invest more money or save for a down payment. I might go ahead and move this leftover money to some other category that I'm more focused on achieving. Then after I've done that, I'm going to assign any extra dollars I have as far as I can into the next month. And then I'm ready to go in February and go back to using that daily routine. And this right here is why YNAB is so powerful. It helps you get conscious about actually using your money to achieve the goals that you have and spend more money on the things that you care the most about. If you found this video helpful, be sure to check out the rest of my YNAB videos inside this tutorial playlist for a deeper dive on all the amazing features in YNAB.